exceptionally well placed to speak to us today about internationalisation. He has a background in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, he's worked in the European Commission, and he's been Policy Director of the Immigration and Nationality Director of the Home Office, and so much else besides. But we're extremely grateful that Martin has found time in his diary to be here today. And at this point, I hand over to Martin Donnelly. Thank you, Martin.
Well, thank you, Nicola, and good morning, everyone. It is a real privilege to be here with you at what is a very successful and growing event and celebrating one of the most successful and important sectors of the UK economy. And if I have one message to underline, it's that whatever the outcome of the UK general election, we know that all of the major parties strongly support our industrial strategy, and the higher education sector in all of its forms is a key part of that strategy. So British government support for the work that you do will continue and, I believe, grow over the years ahead. I think we do have a success story to champion, and Nicola set out some of the reasons why it's important. I just want to review those briefly with you this morning. Higher education is, of course, becoming more global, but it's also very local. And it's great to know that in the audience this morning we have colleagues and friends from India, from a range of countries in the Gulf and elsewhere. It's very clear that effective higher education has to involve a range of students, can often involve learning in more than one physical place, and has to be open to global excellence. We know in the UK that overseas students bring a key international dimension to our university campuses. I've seen it myself on several campuses recently. They support UK research. They enable us to provide courses in a range of key subjects which otherwise might not be possible to provide. And UK universities are increasingly effective at managing the right balance to ensure that the experience for international and UK-based students is complementary and of high quality. Universities UK and the Higher Education International Unit are an absolutely vital source of best practice in this, and conferences like today's really help to explain, to learn from each other about how best to deliver a high-quality service product. You don't need me to remind you, but I will anyway, that income from education activity is a massive benefit to the UK economy. Exports are probably getting on for £20 billion now. The last final figure we had was for 2012, that was 18 billion. More than half of that comes from higher education. And of course it aids university investment, UK jobs. But it also supports our wider economic and domestic diplomatic relationships. I was in Taipei not so long ago talking about research cooperation, and it was striking how many of the senior academics had either studied here or had children studying here. And that's an experience you can replicate from Singapore to Vancouver, from California to Finland or Sweden. It is a tremendously important basis for our continued success as a globalized, knowledge-based economy. So what the higher education sector does is a real investment for this country and other countries for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And we in government are very well aware of that. We also know that globally, education is the second largest sector after healthcare, worth getting on for $5 trillion a year. UNESCO estimated there were about 170 million students in HE 5 years ago, and that figure has only increased. The British Council sees global higher education demand in this decade alone growing by over 20 million students in the top 50 countries. As global growth continues around 3–4%, countries are investing more in education. We know that India plans to create an additional 40 million university places by 2020 and train 500 million people in vocational skills in less than a decade by 2022. Those plans provide great scope for mutually supportive partnership and massive opportunities to share UK expertise, not simply in teaching students here, but in joint courses, in support for examination processes, in using online MOOCs and other techniques ever more effectively, and so on. And it's got to be a long-term relationship that we're building, based on trust, on mutual benefit, and on a secure basis of support from government and the wider public sector. And I believe we have all of those in place. China's education market is already the largest in the world, with student population getting on for 300 million. There is dramatic growth there in higher education institutions and in public education investment. And I was talking in a Beijing law school a few months ago to a group of public servants from across China doing mid-career development. So we know that the educational opportunities are not simply at the youth end of the market. Increasingly, they are concerned with how you provide high-level vocational training to people who want to take anything from 2 or 3 months to a year or more out of their careers, study and go back into them. And again, the UK has a huge amount to offer in that sector. We have our world reputation for higher education. And I can say this as a government bureaucrat. It's built on the independence and autonomy of the sector. And we are committed to supporting that and maintaining it in the years ahead. We have a strong presence in all the global university league tables, second only to the US. And I think that is something that we also want to build on. We have the second largest share of the internationally mobile student market, important in itself, and as a sign that we're continuing to deliver the quality education which the sector is looking for. In 2013-14, we had about 450,000 international HE students in the UK, of whom over 300,000 came from outside the European Union, more than ever before, and spread right across the range of our institutions. Recent data from UCAS shows a continuing growth trend for non-European Union undergraduate recruitment. In 2014-15, we had an increase of around 6% in the number of overseas accepted applicants. And the 2015-16 figures last month show the number of applicants even higher than the year before, which is very good news. We have a strong transnational HE education offer, with 350,000 active students enrolled on UK higher education programmes overseas. And these are delivered, as you will know, through an increasingly wide range of models. UK overseas campuses, but also distance learning. Also partnerships with overseas providers. And I see that as a very exciting area. I was visiting the Warwick Monash in Australia collaboration. And it's fascinating to see the depth that collaboration is now moving into. Not just courses and professors, but the use of technology to ensure that it's not simply about the physical presence of the student. It's also about how you can go on working collaboratively online and digitally. And I think we will see a lot more of what I think of as deep collaboration between institutions in the years ahead. We now have nearly 80% of UK institutions engaging transnationally in more than 200 countries across the world. And of course, our range of expertise beyond teaching in curriculum design, in governance, in leadership, in quality assurance, in provision of educational materials is a tremendously important part of our wider offer. And with an election not very far away, you'd expect me to touch on the subject of visa rules for international students. I and colleagues in the department, and of course our ministers, are very aware of the strength of feeling in this sector and a perception in some quarters that the changes to the rules in 2010 made our international strategy more difficult. I'm also aware of the figures, continued increases in numbers, due not least to the growing Chinese market, but some decline in students from countries such as India and Nigeria. It's just worth underlining that we continue to value the contribution of international students as part of the wider success of this sector. We also recognise through the research councils the valuable research they undertake in the UK. They're a critical part of our research base. We want that to continue. We also want successful international students to stay in the UK after graduation as the engineers, designers and entrepreneurs of the future, contributing to success in these sectors. So we value the dialogue with the sector. We need to know when perceptions are not in touch with reality. I don't need to tell anyone here that there are no quotas on international students coming into the UK, but we need to ensure that we communicate that message effectively across all markets. You know too that the ability to recruit students from overseas comes with responsibilities. It is important that the sector takes responsibility for always ensuring that the international students that are recruited comply with all the rules on work during study. Ensure that where that's part of the deal, they return home at the end of study and are aware of the specific opportunities in which they can continue to work or study in the UK. In our experience, the vast majority of institutions absolutely understand this, but we need to make sure that the rules are clear, understood, and followed. Looking further ahead, we've tried to set a framework for this sector when we published the International Education Strategy in 2013 to link higher education in with our wider support for the UK economy through the industrial strategy, which I've mentioned. This ensures that when we're talking about areas like technology or the skills the sector needs to succeed, or areas like government procurement or finance, we treat the higher education sector the same way we treat the automotive sector, the oil and gas sector, digital, and so on. And we continue to ensure that we work with the sector through a strategy council as well as through direct contacts to look at the challenges ahead and make sure that we in government and the public sector are doing the maximum to support your continued success in this very competitive environment. So we are promoting a warm welcome for international students, and I've been impressed with the way that universities and other HE bodies have focused on this. We support transnational education for the reasons that Nicola mentioned. We want to see more UK students going abroad. It really helps. We want to build a new relationship with emerging countries from Brazil to Vietnam. This is very important going forward, based on trust and based on their understanding of a commitment to what government brings. So our strategy was co-developed with the education sector and includes a range of actions for both government and the sector. One of those is the promotion of the UK's offer through the Britain is Great marketing campaign, which I hope many of you will have seen. And this campaign is helping us to underline the UK welcome for international students and to dispel some of those myths that still hang around about our visa system. And one of the messages we get across is a very simple one. There is no cap on the number of genuine students who can study here. That message and our offer is reinforced through visits by ministers abroad, for example, to India last year from our Secretary of State Vince Cable, and also from Greg Clark, our Minister for this sector. They've been very, very clear. They'll go on doing so. And again, tell us where you think we have to focus those messages to best effect. We've had a refresh and expansion of the Education UK recruitment service run by the British Council. And I know that the new Chief Executive is personally very committed to this campaign. We want to make it easier for overseas students to research opportunities in the UK at undergraduate and postgraduate level. We've tripled the funding from government for Chevening scholarships in 2015 for overseas students studying in the UK, and we've had a doubling of investment by the Department for International Development in its higher education partnerships, which draw on the strengths of our HE sector. The strategy to increase the number of UK students taking placements abroad as part of their UK degrees and beyond is just worth underlining. Again, we want to hear from you as to how we can get better at encouraging UK students to go abroad. Several of my daughters took language degrees because they wanted a year abroad. We need to make sure, though, that the option of studying abroad, whether it's through Erasmus or bilaterally with other countries, is seen as something that sixth formers look at, that undergraduates are aware of, that postgraduates also use, because we've got more to do here. We need to see more UK students studying abroad because it makes them more successful in our economy, as well as being of great personal benefit to them. I got a year in Belgium myself some years ago, which I greatly enjoyed and I think benefited from. Support from UK Trade and Investments Education, which is helping UK organisations access high-value commercial opportunities overseas, is also helping to ensure we build the collaboration and partnership between UK institutions, which is so important in many markets. And so far, the UKTI team has helped the sector win about £1.5 billion of contracts. Contracts for UK universities to train teachers from Peru, for example, as part of the country's ambition to become bilingual in English by 2021. These opportunities will continue to arise around the world. Colombia, Mexico are rather recent examples, but there are many others, and I'd encourage you to ensure that you connect with the UKTI HE team to know where those opportunities are arising and how you might compete for them directly or as part of a wider collaborative group. We've created the International Education Council, which oversees our education strategy in the industrial strategy sector and drive forward our shared strategic thinking. It's currently co-chaired by Sir Eric Thomas, the government's international education champion and Vice-Chancellor of Bristol, and Greg Clark as the key minister. It has 20 members drawn from across the sector, including Professor Colin Rawdon, chair of the HE International Unit and Vice-Chancellor at Cardiff. It met last week. Two of the key discussion points were how do we increase international student recruitment across the UK, and how can the sector contribute even more to the government's 2020 export drive to increase exports to around £1 trillion over the next 6 years. Just to underline again, though, we do see this sector as a long-term area. We must always ensure in everything we do that we are delivering a high-quality service to students, British and international, that our partnership arrangements with other countries are mutually respectful, are based on a win-win relationship and build up over the years. We've been very successful in doing that in the past, and we want to build on that success going forward. Global competition is increasing and will continue to increase. I believe we have a strategy in place with the International Education Council, with the sector as a whole, which equips us well to meet that competition and go on building on the UK's unique strengths of diversity and excellence across the higher education sector. So I'm very optimistic about the opportunities that are out there. It's great to see so many people here for this conference focusing on them. Make sure you work with us in government. Tell us what's going well, what we need to do better to support your continued success in the years ahead. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you this morning. Thank you. Thank you.